call it to order and stand to do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I'm standing in for our duly elected chairwoman, Eileen Brett. So bear with me if I stumble along here. But first we want to review the minutes from July 17th meeting. Does anybody on the committee have any comments, edits, changes they want to make? Okay, they stand approved? Okay, so approved. New business, and we'll move right along to 168 Abrams. If you can bring your plan and just put it on the table there for us and sort of walk us through what trees are going to be removed, which one, where are you going to do the replacements, what your tree protection looks like. You need to talk into the mic, I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. For the clearing permit at hand here, basically, as the key indicates, you've got the orange X's. The plan? Okay. All right, that better? The orange X's.
Oh, right, I'm sorry. For the record, can you tell us who you are?
Yeah, that would, yes, I would wonder. Eric T. Leeson, registered landscape architect with Wallace Landscape Associates. So,
Okay,
yeah,
thanks.
this plan created by Padula Engineering is working in conjunction with my firm for the permitting. The orange X's represent the trees that are to be removed, and the green colored in, whether it's an evergreen symbol or a a traditional shade tree symbol, are for trees to be replacement trees in their place. The chart indicates, again, a total of, there's actually 30 trees to be removed. Several of them bump up in size quantity, so they increase the actual replacement value to 32. We are replacing with 32 trees of the appropriate sizes. I would make the comment that a number of the trees that we are taking out, in fact, a majority of the trees are what I would consider, alien invasives. They're Acer platanoides. You've got a bunch of, couple Norways and a bunch of hemlocks, Canadian hemlocks, which tend to be, most of them, if you saw them on the property from the pictures, they're highly elevated. Again, they were planted probably 30, 40 years ago with intended screening. They're diseased, they've lost all their foliage. Some are, like, I'd say 75, 80% dead. A couple are actually hazardous, including a number of the Norways down along the street here, which have a major lean out over the roadway.
Steve, your table, it has the wrong calculations?
Yes. Yeah.
And I had mentioned that to the gentleman while we were briefly waiting. So by the ordinance, there's a couple things. So by the ordinance, if a tree is deemed a hazard, there is no compensatory tree required. But without specific listing on that, what tree, what's the matter with it, what its deficiencies are, then it's not considered a hazard. So there is compensatory. So they have a 30-inch tree. They use the old ordinance. So by the new ordinance that's a couple years old, they need 4 additional trees in compensatory plantings.
I had a lot more, but I think what should be done is maybe a hazard report, because I know a lot of I used to work at this property. Mm-hmm. A lot of those trees are terrible.
Yeah.
And because I have 55 replacements, 24 being large shade, according to
The
what
new
you
calculation?
have. Yeah,
Okay.
with the ordinance now. But I think a lot of those trees are in really bad shape.
So
I would recommend.
the board has an option. So we could have this consultant come back with the tree table,
And hazardous tree report.
with the hazardous tree, which may reduce or, his or her compensatory trees. Either way, the table has to be amended.
Right.
And then
And
the
I-
plan would have to be amended. If Mr. Gibbons is on, then, 20 more trees have to be shown.
Yeah, and I actually have lower count of trees. Looking at some of the maples and the hemlocks, I'm sure John would consider them a hazard. But you have plenty of trees, but you might need, according to the ordinance, more shade, large shade trees.
2.5-inch caliber.
Yeah.
safety.
But I think you should do that first. And it said Ward is doing the removals.
Ward will be doing the removal.
So just ask them to do the hazard report,
Yeah.
send it to John, and maybe just come back next. Do you have to do it before then?
That was preferred, again.
Well, if they're
yeah.
hazard trees, he can get them done.
So what the board, the commission could say, the plan is approved conditionally based on hazardous tree report. The applicant would submit revised plans based on our current ordinance, netting out the ones that are hazardous. We have the arborist look at it. If it's okay, then you submit that for the clearing permit as well as the grading permit.
Yes, yeah.
And the arborist will be back next week. He could go to the site. So I would ask you, if this is what the commission wants to do, to coordinate with Ward. Ward needs to send in a written report, tree by tree, based on that table of what is hazardous and why. That can be netted out, and then that would be would provide you with the true amount of compensatory plantings that are required.
It's fine by me. Yep.
Does everyone in the committee agree with Steve's comments?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thanks.
much. Okay, the next new business, 452 Boxwood Road. You could state your name for us.
Yes, Dave Fiorello from Omni. We're the engineers for the site. This site was part of a subdivision that was created as part of a lot line change back in 2004. This is a vacant lot. It's been vacant as part of that. In 2010, another developer submitted site plans for development of this lot with a house. Grading permits were approved at the time, but I think because of the economy downturn, it was never followed through. So a new owner has come in and is submitting new plans for a house on this lot. As you can see, there's a number of trees on the lot. We have identified them on the plan, and we have a table on sheet 2 listing the trees to be removed. We have 21 trees, 6 to 18 inches, 9 trees, 18 to 30, and 3 trees greater than that. The proposal is for a new house, driveway, courtyard. So a number of those trees are coming down. So we have our table there of replacement trees. There are 66 replacement trees required. We have them listed according to the ordinance. We do have a plan more or less showing the intent of putting trees in there, but I think the owners have the intent of preparing a landscape plan that would identify that. But we've identified all the trees that have to be replaced and made a list of the requirements for replacement trees. During construction plan, we have our tree protection shown on our erosion and sediment control plan. Trees along the front we're trying to maintain. There's a number of trees along the side. So we have tree protection fence along there, and I've identified the areas of disturbance, the erosion sediment control that goes along with it.
Anyone have any comments or thoughts?
I have a question on the landscaping plan. So if that comes at a later date, what if, so the way you have it now, it looks like you just put in the replacement trees. So are they going to, what happens if they decide to only use 60% of those replacement trees? Is that?
They're required by ordinance to install the entire or number of replacement trees. If I'm correct, Steve, There's
Well,
an
you-
escrow amount that has to be put up.
You're required to replace them, but you don't have to replace them on that yard, right, Steve?
The intent of the ordinance is to replace it on the yard. If they felt that they could not fit those trees, it's $500 a tree for a fee in lieu of, that would go to the shade tree fund.
Wow.
And if there were, I mean, there are times the Shade Tree Commission has said, hey, you can plant them here, but the definite intent is, A, keep them on the lot from where they were removed, and, or provide money to the Shade Tree Fund so that they can be used, planted in a different area.
I'd like to see some follow-up on that landscape plan. I mean, it looks great. Looks like you have them all in there, but I'd still like to see some follow-up at some point, not to hold up the job, but do you agree?
Well, I know on previous projects, the Shade Tree has asked for a landscape plan to be approved by the arborist, if that's something that you'd be willing to do.
I'm good with
I can-
that.
I can discuss that with the owner.
Yeah, I think that would be fine, as long as the township arborist reviewed it and approved it. James, Seth, you okay? Yeah,
Big enough project to, I think.
I think it
Validate
warrants
that.
having the township just do the follow-up, sure.
But not to hold it up. You know, I'm good with what it looks like, just would like to see a follow-up in lieu of something that's happened in the township with the landscape plan changed it completely, and I'd like to see that be
Yeah, it's-
something that we pay attention to.
Sure.
It's a good check and balance.
Yes, agreed.
So, seems to me like there's just an awful lot of trees being taken down. There's no way to realign the drive or do anything to help save some of these trees
Well,
on
a
this
lot of
lot?
the trees are central to the site. The majority of them are in the building envelope. There are a number of trees. I think one thing that really strikes in comparison to this plan is the trees that we're keeping don't show up as dark, so they are on the plan. But there are a number of trees along the frontage that we're trying to maintain. There are a few trees in the back, and that's a good place for the replacement trees. Because of the grading and the drainage and the stormwater management, we're sort of limited to, we take into account that some of those trees, even if, maybe they can be maintained, but with the grading, the trenching for the piping and systems, I think it's best to show them as being removed. If we can keep them, we certainly will.
Okay. Does everyone approve them based on the condition that the landscape plan will be reviewed and approved by the township arborist? Okay, so approved, thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay, that completes the new business. Tree removal with clearing permits. We did review Abrams Lane. Is anyone here from 721 Governor Circle?
I'm John Verbrugge from a Raider Tree Service.
Okay. So do you have a plan or anything with you?
I had submitted everything via, I think, at least a month ago.
Sir, would that be your letter and the picture?
Yep.
So just, not to be a pain, but usually, especially when we're looking at 23 trees, again, usually there would be the list of each tree, its diameter, and the specific deficiencies that it has. And I know you're a certified arborist, but this is a blanket statement that says all these trees need to come down. What's required is a listing of each tree, and then you specify what is the issue with that tree. It's up to the commission to determine, but that's the standard that we go by.
Okay, I did this earlier in the year for a property over on Chetwood Drive. Same thing, and I didn't have to individualize any of the trees, and I think it was 16 trees.
I can't speak to that.
So I just went by
Right.
what
I
did
can't speak
before
to that.
for-
I can only speak to what I reviewed earlier.
Sure. They're all the same species, genus and species, white pine.
Do you know if John looked at these yet, or?
He has not.
Yeah.
So,
I would suggest that we since it's so many trees and they're all going under hazardous, to have John look at them first, right?
What my suggestion would be to conditionally approve it based upon the arborist review of the tree-by-tree outline. So it'll, if the commission does that, we're done. It goes to the arborist, and if he concurs that all 23 are considered hazardous, then you would move forward. If he does not concur, then that would mean you either need to come back, or if there's X trees that aren't hazardous, there'd have to be compensatory plantings.
I already wrote a check for approval. Is that?
I see that. For $250, but,
Yeah.
so the township always cashes the check. It doesn't mean you're
Okay.
approved.
Oh, I just knew.
Right,
I
so-
was told that John looked at it. and-
Now, I spoke to him today,
Okay.
and he specifically asked, so again, when he reviews that, he would normally review your detailed listing, and then he would go out and say, oh, okay, I concur. So that's my recommendation to the Shade Tree Commission, that maybe perhaps conditional based on,
They're all white
James's-
pine?
Yeah, planted on like 6-foot centers. So if you take down one,
Yeah, I drove by them. They're very tall. They look from the street like they're still healthy and in good shape because they're all green and lush looking. But I'm not an arborist either, so
They're all on top.
yes. I would recommend that we take Steve's suggestion and have the township arborist, John Houseback, come by
Sure.
and review with you. And if he says yes, then you're good to go.
perfect. Sounds good to
Okay.
me.
All right, very good.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, that brings us to violation notices. 667 Conestoga Road. Do we know anything about that?
yes,
Mr.
ma'am.
Marsini?
So a violation letter was sent to the homeowner. If you are coming from Garrett Hill and you cross past Ithan, right near the flashing sign, there's a tree that leans out at actually 53 degrees, our arborist told me. So a violation notice was sent to the resident within 5 days to address it, or the township will. We're still talking with that resident, but as it stands, my colleague, Steve McNellis, Director of Public Works, has that tree lined up for removal this Friday.
Okay, great. Oh, wow, that is amazing. Pretty bad. So what is just for my own knowledge, what happens to the homeowner if they don't take care of it and we have to take care of it as the township?
We would send them the invoice, and if they refuse to pay, we would lien the property.
Okay, thank you.
And that was actually in the violation notice.
Okay, good to know.
Is it a street tree? It's definitely on their property?
It's,
Because it looks close to the end.
it is near the street. So the reason the township's getting involved in at this point is because it is a hazard, and we have concern with motorists, pedestrians. Secondary, it will take out a transformer and a bunch of other power lines. So the township's stepping in because we feel it is a true hazard and could affect somebody. So unless the resident does it, the township will do it.
Is it in the right of way?
I believe so. It may be. I don't know for sure.
Doesn't the township usually,
Not on state roads, but
not on state roads?
the reason we're involved is because danger to life and limb. That's the only reason. So it's not so much where it is or whose it is or what right-of-way it's in. It's a danger to people.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Orsini. So that brings us to the 2019 goal updates. Before we maybe move on to that, we have one more person in the audience. Did you have any comments? I don't want to hold you up any longer, or are you just here for your own knowledge? For what? Oh, for Conservancy. Okay, thanks. Okay, so the 21 goal update, or 2019 goal update. Here's my goals. I think we're right on target. I know Matt and his wife continue to do the tree survey, which is our goal number 1. We have moved forward on our fall planting, which we'll get into under new business. We've done communication on the bamboo ordinance with Facebook page, our website, and flyers. Let's see, we're still looking for someone on the committee here to step up and take Joe's place and handle the ordinance, so keep thinking who might want to do that. We have a goal of managing the Shade Tree Fund, which Eileen has done remarkably great job on with her most recent presentation, which we will also discuss in our new business. And partnering with our stakeholders. We had a meeting with the board, with the Radnor Board of, with the Radnor Conservancy, Eileen and I, which I will talk about as part of Eileen's presentation notes that she gave us. I know, Claire, you're representing us on the Park Commission, so that's our other stakeholder, and you're also with the WB, right? Okay, busy girl. Thank you. Are there any updates that we should know about from those two committees for our goals?
In terms of WBA, they're thrilled, and maybe Mr. Norsini, you can speak to the actual timing of the fall planting. I know that's all been in motion.
So the contract, the Board of Commissioners awarded the contract at our last regularly scheduled meeting. Notice to proceed has been provided to the contractor. So he still needs to submit his schedule along with some other items to be official. So I'm sorry. Notice of intent to award has been provided. The notice to proceed will be award, which is the start date of the contract once he gets his schedule of values in and all that. In general terms, I believe the milling and paving of the street adjacent parking will happen mainly in September and partially in October, and the majority of the tree planting will occur in October. They have a due date of, I think it was November 8th, with liquidated damages of $1,000 a day thereafter. So I believe once we get that schedule, you may see the manager and the police chief and our public information officer, Molly Gallagher, reaching out. And I do, to the chairs, to the current chair's point, Molly Gallagher is our public information officer, and I would request if you have anything to get out, you just contact her through Trish Sherwin. She'll put you in touch with her, and then you can go with her. She does an outstanding job, and she is the person who puts everything out for Radnor Township at this point in most cases. So if you have something you want to do, please talk to Molly, and she can use all our outlets to get that in. Main thing is that it's supposed to be done by early November, noting that Thanksgiving is when the really busy time starts in Wayne, and all the business owners would like us cleared there. So, but we're hoping for a great job. I think the paving and the trees will really brighten things up a bit.
And all the species have been approved by the commission, Board of Commissioners?
It didn't, so Jonathan Alderson provided those species. We did not go back to the board and say, so the project was approved,
Okay.
noting that. So it's similar to other projects. The board approves the project, but they don't say, okay, this wall needs to be 17 feet high. So they approve the project, understanding Mr. Alderson did this pro bono for us.
The other thing I would add is that the Radnor Fall Festival for WBA is on September 15th, Sunday,
Oh, good to know, yeah.
1 to 5. So those trees will come after that, but that's a big day in Wayne.
Yeah,
And I
so
just
in my
saw-
talking to the contractor in general terms, he feels, you know, to obtain the tree stock, and the best time to plant them will be October.
Thanks, Steve.
Steve, one concern I had still was the trees. We make sure they're not like newly planted, because half of the trees are fall dig hazard. That's on, because I saw the bidding list. So that we could plant them, and they're all gonna die. if we
That's
a
why
bad
we have
winter.
Mr. Hosback. So I take care of the engineering side, and I leave the soil mediation and exactly what you said to John.
Okay. But I would
to
just
address.
recommend, if they're gonna keep that, to maybe do containers. Try to get container trees, they do better for the winter time.
Could I ask you, I know you know John, perhaps when he gets back, if you want to discuss that with him?
Yeah, sure.
Based on what's in the bid, everything's B&B,
Yeah.
so,
exactly.
I mean, that's what we'd
That's
like
why
to
I'm
plant.
worried. I think 60% of the trees are a fall dig hazard.
So we'll work that with John.
Okay. And there was also, I didn't look at all of it very, very good, but there was one spot in front of St. Catherine's where they're putting an oak tree, and there's probably only 2 feet between the sidewalk and Lancaster, and then another 2 feet between Catherine's and the sidewalk.
I can't remember that we went down that far in the project,
I think there was one,
unless that was from the previous planning, because I know Eileen had trees planted there. Yeah, so I don't think that falls within the WBOD. I know Eileen Brett, in the spring planting, had put in 4 trees at St. Catherine's. Maybe that was it?
I thought I saw it on the bidding specs.
I will check.
I'll double check, but just,
So,
John
again,
should look over just to make sure.
I
they're
defer
not-
to John.
Yeah.
John and I and our firm, we walked the WBOD. He literally said, this is where the tree's going, so I defer to John on that.
Okay. Sounds good.
I had another question. At our last WBA board meeting, there were a couple board members that asked about the bricked-over places where their trees once were, right in the overlay. Do you know anything about that, Mr.
So
Monsignor?
where there is an existing tree, there will be a new tree. Where there is an open spot, just dirt, there will be another tree. But if something was bricked over at some point in time, we're not aware of it. So where there currently is a tree, there will be a replacement tree to most cases. Where there is an empty spot, there will be a new tree. But we're not removing any brick or anything to put a different tree in. This goes back to the WBA ask. Replace 66 trees. It was very specific, and that's what the board approved, and that's what we're moving on.
Okay, thank you, Claire. As far as old business, I think when Eileen gets back, we need to address these 2 items. They've been on here forever. I'm not even sure what they're referencing anymore. I think one of them, they were about invasive vines, maybe.
That's
but-
correct.
Okay. So we'll maybe address that in the next meeting when we have our chair back. So that brings us to new business. And I know, James, you wanted to have a moment to talk to us about the spotted lantern situation going on in the township.
Yeah, before I said that, I did notice afterwards that John Hosback did put something on the Radnor page. So maybe whoever speaks to Molly, we could get that going again, circulated again, because it's getting really bad.
Yeah.
And one other thing, is the township going to be doing anything? Do you know there was the sticky bands.
Correct.
that they
I
were
believe
talking about.
we ordered that. I don't know where that's going to be placed, but there's no, as far as I know, and so my colleague handles, so I'm on the engineering side of trees, not so much the removal of hazardous trees and things like that. I don't know if my colleague is aware of anything. I'm not aware of any spraying program or anything like that.
Okay. Should we, do you think? To kill some of the, like the Ailanthus, the tree of heaven?
So McKeag Nature Preserve in Upper Marion, we walked there with our dog, and there were spotted lanternflies everywhere, and they put signs up, hey, we've sprayed. So I sent that to John and the manager, and John had said he questions the effectiveness of the spraying, because there was a couple of cases where they sprayed, and the population did not decrease, it increased. Not that the spraying helped it increase, but it just increased
didn't help.
anyway.
Okay. That's all. I think John covered everything on the website, so if we could circulate that again.
Okay.
And then I gave you that.
Yes.
That
Do
we could
we,
give to
do we
her,
need
too.
to show this on the slide thing or
I
whatever?
think we put it on the
Yeah,
Facebook
so
page or something like
Duly,
that.
duly noted. I will do that as a follow-up item to put reactivate John Horsbach's link
Yeah.
on our website and put our new flyer.
Because they're here.
on about it,
They're
yeah.
all over the place.
Yeah. Okay, the other piece of new business we wanted to talk about was our fall planting. And I guess we all saw Eileen's very good, thorough slide deck. I'm not sure, do we need to, if we're going to walk through this, do I need to have that on the screen, do you think, Steve? Or?
On the laptop for that to happen if you wish.
Okay, because we're going to walk through it, so.
You wish me to be Vanna White?
Such a resemblance.
Boy, oh boy.
So there's a couple of questions in front of the Shade Tree Commission regarding this planting. You know, do we want to go with all large canopy trees, or do we want to mix it up like we did with our spring planting? I think when we looked at the spring planting numbers, they were almost even, and it does, if we go with the small canopy trees, it does give people the options to have a little more flexibility about where they could go, under wires. Some people prefer the flowering trees, just personal taste, but I mean, I think my preference would be to go with the mixture of the large and the small, but I want to get the committee's input so we know what kind of an RFP to send to the BOC. Anybody have any thoughts?
I agree with the mix. I mean, I don't think we're in a shortage of large canopy trees per se. So I think it's better to have flexibility than not.
Is that okay with you, Claire?
Yeah.
Yeah,
James,
because a
anything?
lot of the large canopy trees too, if they're dug in the fall, they're not gonna do what they might
Right,
not do well.
right, okay, good point too.
So we have to be mindful of what we're choosing. And
Okay.
what's gonna get substituted, because it's gonna be tough. It's pretty late this year, right?
It is.
So they might not be digging the trees you want. Then if they substitute them, then we might get fall dig hazards, and they might not survive.
Yeah, so is
there's
that
a
something
lot of
that
money.
we need to communicate somehow in our information to the residents that,
If I could interject, there's a step here that we're missing. So we have to go to the Board of Commissioners,
right,
okay, for approval. And I know some of this was in Wayne, that Eileen wanted to do them for. And in the conversation I had with her, so unlike the spring planting, I can flip those specs around. I wrote them 5 years ago. I don't change a whole lot. That's a whole different specification. We literally would need to go location by location by location, mark out on the sidewalk where it's going, and I need to create a specification specifically for that. And that does take some time, and I can't do it till the Shade Tree Commission says this is where we want to go. But you also have to go to the Board of Commissioners. This is a little different than just we want to do our standard planning where we go and we work within the right-of-way. If it goes to downtown Wayne, I would request that you make a presentation to the commissioners as to this is where we wish to go, and this is specifically where we wish to plant the trees. Because this is outside the normal planting program that we have.
okay.
So that
Do we
means-
anticipate any plantings in the, WBOD?
I think there
Since
are some in the slideshow.
There are, maybe we skip to that, so we appreciate what Mr. Orsini's talking about. If you go to like page 7 here, Eileen's presentation notes St. Catherine's, La Panaquintian, the Baptist Church, all of those on Lancaster. And then on page 8, she highlights all really good bare spots that would benefit from trees. The fire station, and then the Radnor Library parking lot. Being a municipal lot, you would think we could get BOC approval fairly, readily on that one.
But that lot is up for repaving at some point,
So
so.
the South Wayne lot is in the design to be a stormwater management facility. We got really held up with PennDOT for over 3 months. So that lot will cease to exist and then come back. And it will be planted and will have streetlights. The North Wayne lot, we have requested in a future budget year to do the same, but that may or may not be approved. But that's relatively easy because there are grass strips where you could plant these trees. The specification is very, very simple from my end. Again, I'm really just altering what I've done in the past. Whereas if we go to certain areas in Wayne, where, again, it involves sidewalks and things like that, that's where, me, the arborist, and a couple members from the Shade Tree Commission need to take a night or a day and physically walk everything, mark it out, and then we take pictures, we create a spreadsheet for the contractor to know this is exactly where I'm placing it.
Well, and plus, someone has to get permission from the business owners and get their buy-in on it. I'm just,
I think because the current project in the WBA, they came to the Board of Commissioners for, so they already bought in, right? They came,
so even like,
Yeah.
even so like Panaquintian, those folks would have bought in on the WBA, the churches. I'm not sure how far out the
The churches
WBA
aren't
permit goes.
members of the WBA,
No.
but they,
Right.
but so,
That's what I'm thinking. I mean, we have to get the church permissions, we would have to get the restaurant's permission.
or at least visit them.
yeah.
I did, pictured right there, Wayne Manor, that's, my brother-in-law owns that building, his company. I did speak with him, he was up for planting trees there at the end of each parking cap. So I think, it'll be just a quick email, phone call. Most people, I would assume, would say yes.
So if I could ask, so this is another item that Eileen and I discussed.
Mhm.
So it's the normal tree program, we plant in the township street rights of way, right? So
Mhm.
that's all well and good. And even planting in Wayne, which I think Eileen's idea is fantastic, to put trees where we don't have them. I think that's a great infill project. But I'm not sure, like on that, like going back onto private property in a parking lot, I don't know where you're saying that it would go.
Yeah, I just proposed the idea because it was on the agenda, but it would be right near the sidewalk. I would just assume that was near the right-of-way, but,
No,
it's just
that would be, yeah,
Yeah.
I guess my point was, we don't want to go back onto private
Right.
property and plant plants, but if it's along the street, for street trees, I think that's quite appropriate.
So just quickly, wouldn't we want to wait, though, for this property? Because that is where, I mean, we have a huge stormwater issue there, and the plan is for there to be a stormwater project in that parking lot that will help alleviate the huge flooding that takes place in front of the firehouse and in front of the school administration building. So I wouldn't plan, I don't know, I mean, I'm not an expert, but I wouldn't plant any trees there until we get that project
I think that makes good
It's a valid
sense.
point.
Are we talking about the parking lot beside the baseball field or on the other side of the street?
The South
So
Lane,
this
what we
is
call the
the
South
South
Lane
Lane
municipal
lot.
Okay,
So it's,
It's by the library.
Yeah,
Yep.
the one that backs up to the library.
Yeah.
like
Got it,
Right there
okay.
on that side of the street.
And the trees will ultimately be part of the stormwater
right, so
plan.
there's islands in that design, and those islands will have trees.
Okay, so I think we could use our tree numbers in better places then, since that sounds like it's going to be covered. I'm just concerned hearing you talk about your timeline a little bit, Steve, in that I love Eileen's idea of infilling, but I'm also concerned from what James is saying in terms of time frame and your personal time to have to write individual ones. Maybe this is something we do for our spring planning.
I love the idea of the project. I think it's fantastic. I did mention to Eileen, I did have a concern on the timeline because, so if you meet on the 10th, you can't go to the board to the second meeting in September. So I can write the basic specification package anticipating that we go forward, but very quickly after the board meeting, we would physically need to go and we need to mark out our spots. And I'm looking at this map, I'm not quite, doesn't look like she has that many, if that's what these stars. Proposed new pits and trees. So
Right.
it's down by St. Catherine's, and there's some back in the lot. So if you choose the North Wayne lot, which is this, that's easy. That's owned, well, it's not all owned by the township. Wayne Presby owns some of it too, so we'd have to get their permission. But there are green strips that you can plant in, and, with relative ease.
We could approve that tonight, right? Just so you can do what needs to be done?
Well, my suggestion is the commission approve an entire plan, whether it involves, I'm gonna make up numbers, 40 trees, as we've done in the past, on our residence properties, or on township right-of-way, on residence properties in the township. And if there's X trees that are going in Wayne, where do they go? I mean, it doesn't look like there's that many.
It looks like 6, 7.
So it gets a little tricky. So here's Starbucks, and as you go down, like in front of Joe's, you can't plant anything because that's all access there.
Yeah.
You really have to go.
Yeah, it's too bad, yeah.
Skip down to St. Catherine's or go up, and the bank already has trees.
Right.
That's why we walked past that when we were doing the WBOD planning.
Does the SEPTA lot come into play there behind Wayne Press? So,
Working for Amtrak, I can tell you that's all going to be controlled by SEPTA.
right, so,
Yeah.
So-
We've been waiting 3 years to get the
Yeah.
ability to go on that lot
Yeah,
and do infiltration testing. We finally got Amtrak approval because they own it and lease it to SEPTA, and now we've been waiting over a year for SEPTA to let us do it. It's
So
been three
prob-
and a half
yeah.
years.
yeah.
When you go into the North Wayne lot,
So we're talking about in here,
yeah, from North Wayne,
that's right here.
are those, I think they're like locust trees up there? Are
Right,
they
so these
coming
are
out?
these are against Dr. Ritz's, and these are against the Weichert Realty,
Mhm.
right? I can't remember if we included them in the WBOD planting. The problem with these, Mr. Gibbons, is literally the wires are growing through those trees. I mean, they are embedded in those branches. So not to hold up our project, maybe that's something for this project, because we need to get a contractor who has the wherewithal to be able to remove that tree. Planting the tree is not so bad, but where those locusts are along Dr. Ritz's, they're really growing up out of asphalt and rocks. I mean,
God
it's
bless
amazing
them.
that they're as big as they are.
Yeah.
But we would remediate the soil. I mean, that's always a possibility too.
Because I think they're not doing too well either.
No. And I'd have to talk to my colleague in Public Works. He may have them slated for removal. That I don't know.
And if they were, it'd actually be pretty nice to have nice symmetrical planting
Yeah,
on
that
each
would be,
side.
that
So
would be nice.
that's something I don't think the Presbyterian Church owns out that far. That's something we may be able to do. We would just have to include in the part of the contract the cost of removing. So I'm going to make up a number. Let's say it's $10,000 to remove those trees. That's that much less that you have to plant with.
Yeah.
Right.
But I mean, that's fine to have that in the contract.
I think it's a wise decision to wait for the spring, walk Wayne, map it out, and then that way, James, to your point too, the fall dig hazard, we're clear with that because we'll be planting in the spring.
I also think it's wise to see what gets planted for the overlay, and then you can go from there as add-on appropriately, right? And get the benefit of the spring planting.
Well,
Yes, whatever the commission wants to do, I see the benefit of what you're stating.
And the other thing too is if we have a solid overlay plan when we go, if we need to get permission from business owners, we have buy-in from the community versus just doing it off the whim.
True. Good.
So we're
good
saying
idea.
like wait for everything, the planting?
No, I think we're just saying these specific sites in
Okay.
and around
Right.
the center of Wayne.
Can I make one suggestion? So
You can make more than one.
we have Briarwood Road. The stream goes through there. There's actually a bridge that spans that. And we, the township, own open space further back, but it's actually almost like a flag lot that comes out to Briarwood Road. And on the one side are highly eroded banks. So a resident lives there, and she actually looked into it, and she said, "Hey, this is your property." And I was like, son of a gun, it is. I mean, I knew where the open space was, but I didn't realize it came out that far. None of us did. So maybe that's a riparian planting you could do, and I could take one of you out there. I'm sure we could put, and I defer to James, maybe half a dozen trees or so there. It does two things. Number one, it beautifies the area, but it's helping with our stream bank erosion, and it can become, and a riparian buffer is more than just a tree, but we can make it a riparian buffer, and that would be a great thing.
I'm all for that. Are there any other riparian buffers that the township owns that?
We own a lot, so any stream that goes through our area, or the township-owned open space or parks are ripe for that. We did one in the Willows about 5 or 6 years ago. We planted about 30 trees. along the stream. But that's, the Briarwood Road one is one for sure, and I can get to you before the next meeting, any possible other
Okay.
locations. Now, granted, they're only visible to a few people, but it's serving a purpose.
Yes, and I think that ties in with our goals of helping. Yeah, he's ready, yeah.
Related to your comment, that area,
Wait, Eric, tell us who you are.
Sorry.
so you can
Eric
get
Jansen.
going. Yeah, and go ahead, how you know it,
And what?
and how you know all that, because of your,
How do I know what?
That you're with the Radnor Conservancy,
I'm with the
right?
Conservancy, yes, but
Okay.
also with the scouts and looking at trails and things, that strip, that flag lot that you're talking about actually goes back into an area that connects to Sawmill and the trail there, and there's been a lot of talk about trying to get that trail to come up along there. So if there's an opportunity to do planting and also plan a connector trail, it would be a great opportunity to do both at the same time, if that's, I don't know if it's, I haven't been back there in a long time, so I don't know.
So, if I may, so I agree, I think it's a great plan, but the two are somewhat mutually exclusive. So this is the government, this is one contract, right, to plant trees. It's a whole nother movement to get the trail going. That's something we go to the Board of Commissioners for. If they approve, we get it built. So, and I hate to sound bureaucratic and very narrow, but the scope of this project is very narrow.
Yes,
Plant trees.
yes.
Well, I guess then I would say, great, plant trees, but don't plant trees in such a way that a trail couldn't be put in at some point.
Okay,
Understood. I think that's a great
duly
idea.
duly
Sure.
noted. We can ask for that.
The Fenimore Woods Park project, I saw that was starting this,
So I would really defer to my colleague Tammy Cohen. She's, this is her baby.
Okay.
She's put a lot of sweat equity into this, and she's done look at Clem McCrone's playground, and you can see the fantastic job she does. She
Certainly.
does a great job. So what you see there now is, or was there, was construction. It was just backhoes digging for infiltration testing. So there's no park construction. This is just one of the steps that we need to do in the design of our stormwater management.
okay.
And,
Just mentioning
I'm
if,
sure Claire, at one point, Tammy will update the Parks Board on what she's doing there.
okay. Just leaving that as an open item in case trees are needed there for, if there's any that are removed or,
Yeah, once they get done their stormwater management, it's a good place to revisit.
yep.
And Steve, does the township own to the left of Sawmill, where Drawson was?
So the township owns from the Willows on
They own all
Darby Road all the way down to
The Boy Scouts.
the Boy Scout house, behind it. They own the Boy Scout house, we're behind it.
So
So we
could
own what we
could
call the
plant
Wheeler
there
track.
too? Is
Pardon
there
me?
anything going on in those big fields? I mean, the cows look like they're really hot. And if we stuck a couple of trees in the middle there, I think it would look nice.
Well,
and-
there is a stream that runs through there.
there's
No.
also a trail proposal.
Yeah, so the
Well, I'm
Darby
saying up
Paoli
closer to the
multi-use
road.
trail, what will happen is, you'll come down, you'll cross Sawmill Road, you'll go into what we call the Wheeler Tract. You will take a pedestrian bridge over Darby Creek into Sawmill Park. So the idea there is to get people off of the Sawmill Road Bridge proper.
Yeah.
Those plans are still being designed. I mean, we have, at one point, I'll have Meliora back at the Parks Board to go through that, and I can bring them here. But that doesn't, and some of the trails are what we call soft trails, so it's really just like shortly mowed grass that goes through. But I think maybe once we get a better handle of where that's going, more like a final design, so we don't interfere with it, I think that would be a great place to
Well,
put
even if we just kept along Darby Paoli Road, like keep in 30 feet and line that road.
And that would be a great thing when you go to the board and say, hey, here's some real specific places
Okay.
we want to go. Because they moved the fence back, like 25 years ago because the cars were always hitting it. So maybe in that area, like back, so we don't have to worry about cars, you could put it.
If you look at the, sorry, Steve, if you look at the plan that either Meliora or the Natural Lands Trust did, where the soft mode trail goes around and along the creek, there is a whole riparian plan of trees along the creek. And then, as Steve said, the Darby Paley Trail hasn't been 100% designed yet, so.
We do know there's going to be a pedestrian bridge over the creek. I mean, we have pretty much the layout of where it's going. We're still doing the final design. There is no funding for this project, by the way, also, just so everybody knows. Only design. There is no funding, but we did get approved to have McMahon and Associates, who is a sub-consultant to Meliora, apply for grants for that project. So my request would be, let's see what happens with the trail. And then if we wish to plant trees, because there is a creek that goes right through the middle of the Wheeler Tract, and that might be an area that you might wish to do that in.
Okay.
Can I add something to that? I think
Sure.
it's so important, and it's so wonderful to have Mr. Norosini back here at Shade Tree, is because that line of communication, and even with Mr. Jansen, of what is needed and what is being proposed and planned really helps our goals. So I think that's really, I think communication is something we want to ask for.
So-
Where can trees be best married with trails and things with the township?
So we'll be back, I'll be back in September, and maybe I can put together a general project update. So the Hartford Trail, I don't know if you're familiar with that.
No.
So basically, there was an existing driveway, which was the trail, which I used to walk all the time with my dog. It turned out that that was private property. This is in Commissioner Booker's ward. He was a real proponent of getting this reestablished. The trail's designed. There are a considerable amount of trees that are going to be removed in that area because our arborist went out and basically said, I think he kept one. So we do have a lot of plantings there, whips, small trees, large trees, but maybe, depending on when we get our easement agreement back, that's when we can start, that's when we'll get a bid. Maybe that's another place. So I'll in September, I'll have something for the Shade Tree Commission showing the various projects we're going through at this point.
Yeah, that would be great.
That'd be super.
One more quick thing to add, and Steve, this question for you, you may know. I was speaking with a friend, and they mentioned the municipal lot that's near White Dog and the old Anthropology with the winding sidewalk and trees. Was that a township project? Do you know?
So we call that the AT&T lot.
Yeah.
Very original name. And we actually, it's owned by AT&T, and we have a long-term lease.
Okay.
But if you notice, the Public Works folks, they maintain everything in there.
Right. Okay. I just figured that was a good example of, if we wanted to replicate that somewhere else, based off of Eileen's proposals, that would be a good use case.
Steve, that's not included in the overlay.
No, so the overlay actually, it doesn't, I can't remember, it goes up towards there. But when we walked it with John Hosbach, there was a couple of places where there was very healthy, mature trees, and it just didn't seem right to remove them to plant a 2.5-inch caliper tree.
Yeah.
But there were other, actually pretty sizable trees along North Wayne that are going to come down. But we weren't doing anything up there. So as you had noted, that's pretty well landscaped. It's a nice trail that goes through there. There wasn't as much room like down by the bike store and Mick Antonio's Shoes and what's now the State Store, or the Fine Wine, I'm dating myself, the Fine Wine and Liquor Store. Yeah, it's no more State Stores. So the majority, and I think I sent that to you, and I'll make sure you have it at the next meeting, the planting plan and the paving plan. I did provide it to the WBA,
Yeah, that would be helpful.
and I think the Shade Tree Commission got it. I'll make sure you have it at our next meeting.
Okay. I don't remember getting it. Yeah, so that would be helpful to have. Okay, so,
There's nothing going in that lot, right? The North Wayne lot, there's no trees proposed.
No, that's outside the scope of the project. That lot definitely could use some prettying up.
yeah. So I'm thinking if we look at Eileen's slide 3 here, where she talks about budget and the number of trees that we could come up with, our budget allows us about 70 trees. 20 is going to be donated by the Conservancy, which would give us a total of 90 trees. So listening to all these good places in the township that we might be able to make a difference in, out of those 90 trees, I think the Shade Tree Committee needs to think about what percentage of those 90 do we want to, like, put out there for the residences to plant where they want, and what percentage do we want to sort of hold back and give to the township for their needs? And maybe we don't make that decision tonight, maybe we wait until Mr. Norsini comes back next meeting with your township requests.
And I would also request, if you're thinking parks, we would have to go to Tammy Cohen, because she has the overview of what's going on in all the parks, much more so than I do. And I don't mean just new park construction. So if there were parks or a park that you wish to plant in, I would request that either go through the park board, or at least I would put you in touch with Tammy to go over what you wish to do. I know there was some talk about planting additional trees at Clem McCrone, or any other park. That would be the proper channel to go through.
Well, I think you raise a good question, Ginny, is, what comes first? What the township and the parks want? I think that's the way to go. And then we fill in with what's left. But
To
that's
give to the
just my
I
opinion.
mean, my other concern is Gretchen and Kimberly from the Radnor Conservancy at our meeting with Eileen and I had a concern that I totally appreciate that. I mean, this has been their baby, the fall planning, and they don't want to see the shade tree dominate and take over the goals and aspirations. And so I'm sensitive to that. If we're going to help the township with their needs, maybe the 20 trees stays with the Radnor Conservancy and they have their own separate fall planning, and we take the other 70 trees and we do what the township needs.
It's a good point.
So
I think it would be a question for the Conservancy. I mean,
does the Conservancy representative have any thoughts on that?
I wasn't privy to the conversation, so I'm not exactly.
Could you step up to the mic, please?
I'm not. I wasn't involved in the conversation, so I'm not
Right.
exactly sure where the divisions are.
I mean, the issue just was that this is a special project for the Conservancy, and they wouldn't retain credit for it and visibility and all for their fall planning, which they've been doing for ages.
Right.
And now Shade Tree has budget and would like to augment the fall planning with the budget that we have.
Right.
And add on an additional 70 trees to the 20 that this Conservancy was going to do. But at the same time, they were sensitive to not being left, in the dust, because it really is their project.
Right, sure. The 20 that you're talking about is for the Wayne Business Overlay planting. Is that what you're talking about?
It's not, no, that's not my understanding. My understanding is it's a general fall planting that they make available to residents.
You mean the one where they come and they pick up the tree and plant
That's
it
right.
wherever? Yeah, I don't think that's going to change.
No, I don't, that's not that.
No, it's not that,
This is a big tree plant.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but that's what they're concerned about, that is going to get overridden and overwhelmed by us now
Right, no,
getting
that's not-
involved.
So I think last year, I might be wrong, but I think the township contracted somebody. Is that right, Steve? For the big tree planting last year? Didn't you contract that because it was under 25,000?
So the way it works is if it's less than 25,000, the Board of Commissioners can approve it without a sealed bid. If it goes above 25,000, it has to be a sealed bid.
Yeah, it's talking about the 20 trees that the Conservancy usually plants.
Well, but is the Conservancy planting those, or are they donating them?
No, they donate them, the residents come get them,
No,
plant
they're
them.
different.
No,
program.
two different things, I
Yeah.
believe.
Yeah, that's two different.
all right, I'm
So
sorry.
there's the
Yeah.
tree
So-
giveaway that they do, right? That they give away like 100 and some trees.
Yeah, and they're like little.
Yeah, way
Yeah.
more than 100, I think,
I
but,
think it was like 300,
yeah, something like that. But
So I-
that's
I
a
don't know,
Her
separate,
flyer,
that's
I
a
thought
separate
it said a
thing.
free
So
blanket
I
away.
think, Ginny, what you're, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Norsini, but I think what happens is that since we're moving forward in these fall plantings and spring plantings, and the Conservancy has these programs as well, I think it's just a matter of communication.
Right,
Is to make
right.
sure we're all on the same page.
The 20,
Yeah.
and you'll, Claire, you're going to correct me if I'm wrong. The 20 was a collaboration between the township and the shade tree, and the Conservancy donating the 20 to add to the 70 or whatever it is that's being planted as part of the overlay. Or in the old days, you'd call your commissioner and say, I'd like to have a tree. And then when the planting happened, you'd get a tree. I don't know how it works
So
anymore. but-
this actually started, as long as I've been here, Kimberly Donches was actually the leader when I came on board here 8 years ago. And we created a flyer. We had buy-in from the solicitor that the wording was appropriate. And Leah McVeigh kept the spreadsheet at Public Works. The flyer went out. It was posted on the website. We got the word out. People replied back, yes, I want the tree. There was a nominal fee as a buy-in, just so folks had a little skin in the game and would keep it watered and tend to the tree.
Right.
And that was how it was done for as long as and that's when Kimberly was with the Conservancy, and it has been her baby since I can remember.
And she's agreeing to run it and do exactly the same
Right.
procedure this time around. So the only difference is that they're going to have more trees thanks to the shade tree. But their comment to me was they want to make sure they still get credit, that it's their program and not Shade Tree's program.
I think the credit is that the collaboration part of it. So the 20 trees that are being collaboratively donated to your program, I think the Conservancy would just like to have credit for those 20 trees. It's not a confusion between the other program where we do a giveaway.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Does that clarify
So
it?
would they actually physically give us trees? Or would they say, okay, when you get your bid, this is the cost of 20 trees, we're going to provide the funding for that?
How has that been done in the past?
I don't recall this kind of mix, which is,
Yeah, I
where
think that's a good question. We have to clarify that, Steve.
I can go back to the board and ask.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
In my opinion.
Where's Laura Luker when we need her?
I think she's away right now. In my opinion, it makes more sense that if you're going to get the 70 trees, you just get 20 more.
Yes.
I mean, I'm pretty sure that that's the way it
I
works.
think on the posting and the flyer and everything, we can give the Radnor Conservancy the credit it's due.
I agree, Steve. That's what my thought was, just to make sure. But now we're sort of setting some parameters for how the trees are being used and utilized, and I just, wanted to make sure everybody was aware that there was some sensitivity about including what the Radnor Conservancy wanted as well.
I've been a liaison on this committee as a Parks and Rec board member. I'm just a liaison, but since I've been a liaison, this is new for Shade Tree.
Yes, that's what my understanding was,
So
Claire,
there
yeah.
comes the confusion,
Yeah.
is Conservancy always ran their programs, and there was no confusion, crossover. Now we have some crossover because we're using our budget to plant trees and do fall plantings and spring plantings, and I think it comes down to a collaborative communication. So if we
Right.
appoint somebody, I don't know if somebody from the township that says, we're working with the Conservancy, and I think that's the goal.
Yes.
Would you all agree? Is that,
Yeah, I
Yeah.
would agree.
okay.
I agree. Yeah, yeah.
Thanks. Okay, not to belabor the point, but,
No, it's a good point. It is, because it's all good things. It's all good things. We all
Yeah, we're
want
all
the
have
same
the same-
thing.
same
And
goal.
I appreciate what Conservancy is trying to do is because they're a nonprofit. They're not government. They're trying to build their program.
Yes.
And partner with us, and that's important. But we're an advisory board to the government,
yeah,
so our hands are tied a little bit differently.
yes,
It's-
exactly, yeah.
Okay.
Would it be, I know you guys want to plant the 90 trees this year, but I'm kind of concerned about the timing, what kind of trees we can plant. What about, since Conservancy is doing 20, and it's just a thought, we do 20, so it's an equal working together, and then maybe separately, we go to the lot on North Wayne, since they're doing Wayne, I think they should have trees in those parking strips, so we don't have to do any type of, you can just plop them in there.
I mean, it's no different really than planning in the
Yeah.
right-of-way. It's pretty,
So
that's
I
that's
just-
a quick and easy.
I just looked through it, and there could be 10 trees planted in the islands. And I think it would really make a big difference
Yeah.
over there.
Yeah.
And if we did that at the same time, if you're doing all this work in Wayne, I think that part should be done too. That's going to make a big difference.
How
I
do we
think.
get that done, though? Because we're under a time crunch,
Well, we
right?
can just
Can we-
vote that we would plant 10 trees there tonight, right? Or-
So, well, you could do, I mean, it's whatever, I'm here to assist the Shade Tree Commission in any way I can.
We need the assistance.
But
Steve.
we're starting to, so if this is the way you want to go, you can do that. What Mr. Gibbons said, I mean, we can just go to a landscaper that we trust and get a price, make sure it's valid, and plant 10 trees there. You could do that in another spot. Or you could do what we've done in the past is you get the buy-in from whatever residents, and along with that, we say we're going to plant these X trees in Wayne, on Briarwood Stream, on this stream. It's however you want to do that. So it's a matter of just a bunch of little contracts or one big comprehensive contract.
Mr. Norsini, in your opinion, who is best equipped to make those decisions? You know, so where, someone
It's
in
really,
your
it's really your
office.
call. So always, 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 we go through the Board of Commissioners though, right? So your next meeting is before the second meeting. So what I would suggest is either if there's a representative of the, or representatives of the Shade Tree Commission, lay out your plan, get the approval to do that. Now, if you segment it and say, step one is plant 10 trees in the North Wayne lot, we just want to do that. That's something we can get 2 or 3 prices from contractors and go back to the board. And then you can still do your big, like your fall planting, which is maybe 40 residences or however many folks sign up. It's really, I'm here to do whatever you folks need me to do. It's your call how you wish to do it.
I like your idea, James. I think that would make sense to, especially given time, given weather, all of that, to maybe give 20 trees from our budget, and then we have 40 trees for the residents. That leaves us out of our 70 tree, 50 that we would have for the township projects, 10 of which could go to the train lot. I don't know how many Briarwood needs, but
I don't think more than, I haven't been there for a few months. I don't think more than 10.
yeah, I mean,
And I would
I'm
actually
sure
defer
you
to
and John could
James.
come up with, you know, 40 more tree locations.
Well,
for
do
us.
you,
Parks, we could talk to Tammy.
do you not want to do what we do with the residents where, you know, they submit and pay whatever it was, $35?
Yeah, I mean, that's what we're saying, give 20 to that program. And then that leaves us 50 for designated spots with the township, 10 of which could be the train lot, 10 to Briarwood,
And the 20 would actually match up with the Conservancy.
would match up with the Conservancy.
So that
Yeah.
would be their
Equal
20.
partnership.
Yeah.
And we're
And
kind of stepping
that-
on their feet. by
Yeah, and that feels
doing-
good to me.
That does to me, too.
Yeah. What does everybody think about that plan?
Just have to
If-
repeat it for Steve.
We can work that out.
If we do
That's
look
not a
at
problem.
slide 6 in Eileen's presentation, she does mention 10 new pits in WPA, and then 40 to residents and business property. So if we did 20 for residents, and then the other 20 for,
But I think we're saying that because of, it doesn't include the Conservancy,
Right.
but it also requires Mr. Norsini a time crunch to write those proposals up.
And it requires
pro-
the Shade Tree Commission time. We physically need to go. And there wasn't that many trees. I mean, I see what Eileen's saying. It wasn't like there's like 40 trees. There's only, I mean, we can do that. I think it's a great idea. If you want to veer off of that, and and I hate to just confuse things, another possibility is if you want to do things in Wayne and you see what was done with the current project that's going to go through, you have the winter to really decide what, where, and
Yeah.
how you want to do it.
I
And
like
that can be
that.
a spring planting program, and we
Yeah.
have plenty of time to mark things out, to talk to business owners, because what we found out was, where you plant a tree affects a business. They don't all want one right in front of their storefront.
Yeah.
So maybe just a suggestion, and nothing, I'm not trying to defer against Eileen at all, because I think it's a fantastic idea. Maybe that's where you have the time to really sit down and say, okay, here's what's here, here's where we want to go. And maybe it's a lot more than just a few trees.
Exactly.
yeah, apologies. When I meant 10 in WPA, I meant 10 in the North Wayne lot. I kind of think of that as the same. But
So if I'm getting this, you want to do like 10 in the North Wayne lot, 10 at Briarwood, 20 from the Conservancy, 20 from Shade Tree for the normal program where people pay money and put it at, okay. We can do that.
But we have more trees than that, though. We have, yes, we have 10 more, because we have 70. So we're going to give 20 to Radnor Conservancy, that's 50. 10 to Briarwood, 40. 10 to the North Wayne lot. What's that, 30 I'm up
30
to?
left, yeah.
So we still have 30 then. So we still have 30 if you can come to us with other project places.
I will do my best, and Tammy Cohen's back in Monday. I will ask her. I think
Otherwise,
maybe
we'll
with
give 'em
John
to their
Hosback
residents.
and the manager, the township manager has a great eye for these things, and Bob Zinkowski, maybe we can come up with some places that they go.
Or along the right-of-way on Upper Darby, on Darby Paoli Road.
It's a possibility.
And if the township says we're not ready to make those decisions, it's after we do the 10 in the lot and, the residents, then we just hold them off for spring.
right, there's no reason that we don't
Right.
have to spend the money.
No, yeah, right, we don't have to spend the money, right? It's still going to be there in the spring.
I don't know, doesn't the budget roll over at the end of the year?
Well, the fund stays the same. We just requested all that money come to the engineering department, but they've never
Okay.
done that yet.
Okay,
Just kidding.
don't want to lose our funding. All right, are we in agreement here? Okay.
Sure.
I'd ask to talk to somebody tomorrow just to make sure I got this all
I'll try
down.
and write up, Eileen's always so good at writing up our meeting notes. I'll try
So,
and put something
10
out.
trees in the North Wayne lot in the islands,
Yes,
10 trees at Briarwood,
right,
and then 20 trees with,
to
Conservancy,
Conservancy.
20.
So they now have 40 to plant.
and then we hold off on the 30 unless you find a spot.
I'll ask the manager, Tammy Cohen, and John Hosback.
Yeah.
Our property as well.
Okay. Okay, that takes us to the end of new business. We had several hazardous trees that were removed. I'm presuming that John took a look at all of these.
That's correct, ma'am.
Okay, and then several trees that were removed by the Radnor Township. No public participation. Anybody else have any comments or thoughts?
I think Steve Rossini is doing a great job.
Yes, really, Steve, we're so indebted to you. Thank you very much, and
My
here
apologies
to
for
help,
the
that's all.
late arrival.
we're glad you made it,
Yeah.
Claire. I'm sure our owners were glad too. I have a note here from Trish that I should make a mention that the Shade Tree Commission will be meeting September 10th at 6:30 next month, as opposed to whatever the scheduled date was, September 20th, I think it was? Or no, September 18th. Instead of September 18th, we're going to be meeting on September 10th.
Okay.
Okay, so we are adjourned.
All right, thank you.
Claire, do you want one of these?
Yeah, I'd
Just
love
handing
one.
them out.
Yes, thank you so much, Jason. So I